Welcome back to Marveelll, everybody. I'm your host, Samantha Tomlinson.
And I'm Kevin Tracy. Tell them what we do on this podcast, Sam.
So we pick a movie and we watch it, and every month we have a different theme. I think if you listened last year, you might know what's the theme for March. But just like a quick little explanation, we did plan on putting things out for February. We had one plan, then I realized that wasn't going to really work, and then we had another plan, and it's a mixture. And this happened last year too. It's a mixture of poor planning slash life gets in the way.
Yeah, and in my case, life definitely got in the way with my job, and I currently have COVID. So it's been a fun couple weeks right now. I've been quarantined for about 3 or 4 days now, and I have completely lost touch with sanity right now.
Yeah.
I I'm so bored out of my mind and also still very sick. So I apologize if I cough or sound kind of weird right now because that's what's going on right now.
I had COVID like a few weeks ago, and it the thing is, I'm currently unemployed, and I've been just like job hunting, and so for me, those couple of days or that week when I was sick, I actually almost enjoyed it because I'm like, it actually maybe gave me a reason to be sitting around and doing nothing. Whereas before, I felt bad about myself that I had nothing to do, and but yeah, it was kind of like it was just I don't know. I don't know how it is for you, but it was just like a cold because vaccinated. So get vaccinated.
Yeah. I'm fully vaccinated. Yeah, I'm fully vaccinated and got my booster, but it's like my symptoms keep
Yeah.
fluctuating. But I'm kind of in the same boat as you because I well, I mean, not completely, because I just started a second job part time. Because my other job, it's not, it's full time, but it's like I work various events. There's not an event every day, so that's another job just kind of like keep things going. So I'm basically working every day now. So when I got this, like, oh, so this is what it's like to relax. And now that I'm in that like mode of like working every day, I'm now like really like restless and bored. So it's like, you know what? Let's just jump on this now. And it's like I know we're still technically in February, but screw it. Let's just get a jump on this because we're like really behind on doing anything planned for February. So that's hence our introduction to Marvel March.
Yay! So last year we
Yay!
did phase one of like Marvel Studios. So we did like Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America, and we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do
Yeah,
for this month. And Kevin, you were the one that suggested it that we do kind of uh, was it you said like not really standard?
non MCU Marvel movies because there's like a fair amount to choose from, and I feel like one of them I really wanted to go into because it's now being introduced into the MCU, and I feel like it would kind of be doing this movie a disservice by not at least
Mm-hmm.
mentioning it on the podcast, let alone doing a full episode on it. Um, because I feel like this movie is kind of overlooked. Because I remember when um around the time when Deadpool came like first came out, everyone was like praising it as like, oh, this is like the best. It was like the first R-rated like superhero movie. It's like, no, there have been several before it. If anything, I feel like this is technically the first R-rated superhero movie, and I feel like
Because
people kind of forget
yeah, it's
that
because this is
like a
very
lot. Like,
like I'm really curious to see how. So we're talking Blade. Did we already say that?
no, I don't think I dropped that yet. So yeah, we're doing Blade from 1998, starring Wesley Snipes.
Yeah, this is. I can see kind of the comparisons to Deadpool, but Deadpool, I will say, and maybe mainly it's just the way it was shot because this is kind of we talked about this last year how Marvel and Marvel Studios just the way visually things look and the way the story is told tend to be everything's a little like drearier, a little darker and edgier. Like even if like Tobey Maguire Spider Man versus Tom Holland Spider Man. Story aside, they're I mean
Yeah, no, I
They're very
definitely
different. Like
see that. Yeah.
the they're shot very differently. The lighting and the coloring is different. Like it's Tom Holland's a little brighter, bolder. And like even like the story, it's just and like narratively, it's just I'm trying to use another word other than different, like get more specific, but like it's a little more, yeah, it's edgier. And Blade, I feel like it's kind of like that. I think I will say if I hadn't already known it was Marvel, I would not have thought it was Marvel. Um, it's very different
Yeah,
than any other Marvel movie
well,
I've ever seen.
it yeah, it's definitely one of like the more unique ones, but this came out, like, keep in mind this came out in like the late 90s, and this was around the time when superhero movies were for the most part kind of crappy. Like this is kind of like in the wake of like Batman and Robin and Steel and like a bunch of like superhero movies that have either been complete and utter flops or have just been like no one takes them seriously anymore to the point where it's just they're just cash cows that there's no milk in it. And this one, since it kind of came out in the 90s, it definitely carried on the trend of dark, brooding, black being like the main color palette for the majority of these, and definitely had like it definitely had like Matrix like themes to
Yes,
it.
I okay. There was a particular scene, just the like layout of the building that they were in, and the design of the building. I
Yeah,
caught
like
that too. That's super funny. But that's a good comparison. Yeah, Matrix. It's got that.
that like that
It's
like punk noir kind of
contemporary.
vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really good
Yeah,
comparison.
like
I
I
agree.
mean like the wardrobe for like half the characters, they look like extras in like the Matrix. Like, oh hey, like I'm Trinity. It's like you like if you take any character from the Matrix and put them in the background of this movie, they would blend right in like immediately. Like it's very much this movie is very much a product of its time. Like some of the effects have not aged well at all.
Oh
Um,
no,
but I mean,
just like Matrix.
yeah, yeah, no, but I mean, there are some instances in the Matrix that have aged pretty well.
Yeah,
At
no,
least the
there's
first
plenty,
one,
but there
yeah,
are some that look weird.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, yeah, yeah. There's one in particular that like I kind of am curious if I had seen it. I mean, I would. It was rated. It's rated R, so I would not have been able to see it when it came out. But I'm so curious if I had seen it at that time, like what that would have looked like. But yeah, if there are certain special effects that just it looked just so fake.
oh
They have
yeah,
not aged
seriously,
well. But I
yeah,
mean, whatever. Like I'm not gonna crap
yeah.
on it for that. My God.
But no, it is really kind of a time capsule of a movie because like all the the technology, cars, fashion, lingo, like it's all 90s, and us being 90s kids, like not only 90s kids will remember this, and it's just kind of funny seeing like the kind of like grunge hip hop kind of angle that apparently like all dark 90s movies had. Like apparently they all had one style, and it either needed to be filmed at night or all the characters needed to wear a combination of all white or all black. And this movie definitely fit that theme and that motif.
I didn't think about that. That's funny. I definitely noticed. I'm like, okay, there's this vampire with Frost who's wearing white and like a fur coat, something. I don't know. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like, sure.
Um so yeah, let's just dive right on into this. So you this was your first time seeing this, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only things about this movie that I had known were I think you had talked about it saying like Mahershala Ali is going to be playing Blade in the upcoming adaptation, and
Yeah.
I don't know, is it this one or is it the next one where there's a deleted scene where there's a blood tornado?
that is so yeah. At the climax of it's this one. In the climax of this one, Stephen uh yeah, Stephen Dorff is the bad guy, Deacon Frost. The climax of this movie that came out is he basically just absorbs like the power of like a vampire god and is like able to like regenerate or something and is really like he's given like very nondescript powers, but in the unused footage that they use for this, they basically just have like this really crappy effect of a blood tornado, but the blood effects are really crappy, so they don't use it that often. And it's just him in there. He sticks his head out. It's like, oh, come on, Blade, what are you doing? You can't fight me. And it's just, it looks really fake, and it's very much unused, like incomplete VFX shot footage
Yeah.
that's out there. You can find this easily like on YouTube, but it's
Hmm.
it's something.
Yeah.
I'm glad they went with the ending that they did instead of that, because
Yeah.
boy oh boy, that is rough looking.
So I know that, and I know the episode of Community that that is sort of, I guess, I don't know, this inspired the episode, or the joke. The joke is that Britta has an ex boyfriend who's in town, and his name is Blade. And so Alvin and Tor are like, hey, you know what? We should watch Blade. And so they're just watching Blade. Like, that's what's going on. Like, they're just sitting there watching Blade. Well, Britta, every time they keep saying Blade, she's like, oh, I gotta go see. Like, that's the whole joke. So the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like,
I totally forgot about that.
the whole time I'm watching that, I was just thinking, like, huh, this is what they were watching. So, uh, I want to talk about like the opening scene of this. I was making notes, and I literally wrote opening scene. Yikes, because it's a woman is she's been bitten by a vampire. She's in the hospital, and she's pregnant, and she's dying, and just like the kind of sort of her sort of convulsing and like being sick, and then the showing her stomach. A lot of it, I was just like, ugh, I don't. They're not gonna show her giving birth, right? Because that's gonna be even more horrifying. And then there's a baby, and she reaches for it,
Yeah.
and then just
Well, I mean
cut.
this.
And
I
then
mean,
what the hell was up with the
I
font
mean,
choice?
I mean to the font. What? That's what you're focusing
the
on?
the font the font for okay, so the opening scene I was like, okay, I'm guessing that's Blade, and then it's just saying like Wesley Snipes, Stephen Dorff, Blade, and it's red because vampire movie, okay, but the font was just like block letters. I'm like, come on, it's called Blade, have way more fun with the design of like
That's your
for the
that's
words.
your first main gripe, not the fact that the not the
Yes.
fact that they just have like a lot of like unnecessary B-roll of just footage being fast forwarded,
um yeah,
because
I
they do
noticed
that
that.
because they do that like 8 times in the movie. It's just B-roll of like the city, and it's just the footage being like on fast forward. It's like,
I noticed
okay,
that, but the font bothered me more. I have an issue with certain fonts. I don't
I
like it. Just didn't feel like it
apparently
was the right font choice. But what city is this set in? Is it New York, or is it just
it
city?
is
Like
it
I
is
assumed it
just
was New York.
not nondescript city. I when I watched this last night, I was like, is this LA?
I'm
Like
like, is
I have
yeah.
no idea what city this is. I think in Blade Trinity it's New York, but if that I don't know if this is the same city between all three Blade movies, because it's been forever since I've seen all three of them.
See,
I could not tell you what city this
I was
was.
like, is it
I looked it
Gotham?
up.
Like, what is this place?
All I know is all, no. This is Marvel, so Marvel takes place technically in the real world, so it's
No, I
real
know it's not
cities.
Gotham. I just remember when I saw Joker, I was like, I kind of like that. I know it's Gotham, but it's kind of, it could be any city. Like, I liked that. Whereas here, I'm like, it wasn't a huge deal. It looked, I mean, I don't know, it could have been LA. I feel like if it is LA or was LA, that seems just really weird that they didn't specify because it's a vampire movie and LA is notably sunny. So to not mention
Yeah.
that, I mean, again, it
Uh.
wasn't critical to the story. It didn't really matter. It could have happened anywhere. Um, but like,
Yeah, the only time they actually specified location is like the very, very, very end of the
oh
movie when he's just randomly in
yeah,
Moscow hunting a
yeah,
vampire. And it's like,
and we
all
know this
right,
because it says
uh,
Moscow in that same block letter font.
what you fixate on like the weirdest shit. I swear to God, it's like you're not even like I think it's weird that like in like the main city, like where the rest of this movie takes place, aside from like the Moscow like ending, uh, like they have Blade's hideout. They have the hospital where he like saves his like doctor friend. It's where Deacon Frost is, where they have like their like hideout for like the vampires, and where they have this like hidden vampire temple where I presume it's all in the same city because they never specify it's anywhere else, and they all get there relatively fast. It's like that is
uh,
a really
uh,
crowded city if all that shit is in the same spot.
I did not think about that, but yeah, see, look what it's doing to us. It's not, again, it's not crucial to the story, but it doesn't really specify where this city is. And I mean, maybe that's kind of the point because they're everywhere. Vampires are everywhere. You have to watch your back. So, I mean, I don't know. It wasn't, I was more just curious where it was set. It wasn't like driving me insane where it was set.
Yeah.
Um, but
It just
yeah.
bothered me that like it seemed like everything was right next to each other. It's like, hey, we kidnapped your doctor friend. Be here soon. And like Blade's there within like the next scene. Like, oh, there was like no time at all between that. Like, I'm presuming like maybe an hour, but it's like, oh, we captured you, Blade, and your doctor friend. It's like, and they get like knocked out. And it's like they wake up in the temple. It's like, all right, everyone's wearing the same clothes, so I'm assuming it's the same day. So this thing is really close. It's like, where the hell is this in relation to like everything else? Because when they leave the temple, they're in like a construction yard. It's like, okay, that could be literally anywhere. Are they in the same city or not?
I mean, it's kind of, yeah, I feel like actually the layout of uh his like garage, like home, whatever, it kind of reminded me of like the firehouse and the ghost in Ghostbusters. Of that
I
same
I
like, wait, what?
I can kind of see that.
Just a little bit, not like just a little bit, like the layout and where stuff was. That really that was my only. It wasn't like it wasn't really of its location. It was more just like there. I don't know, just a little bit of the way it was designed. It's anyway. It's not
Okay.
really big. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay,
Yeah.
so after we had the opening scene in, I think it's at like 1967, it jumps to now in the present where this attractive woman is driving this like kind of like really like kind of dumb guy. It's like, oh, where are we going, babes? Like, oh, it's a surprise. Like, I like surprises. Yeah, it's like, all right, well, you're clearly like cannon fodder for this movie. She takes him to this like slaughterhouse where there's like a bouncer behind the steel door, and they let him in, and it's just like the most 90s nightclub you can imagine. Like they're playing like crazy like hip hop techno music. They have like they do this thing with like the camera where like they fast forward the footage for like a couple seconds, and then they flash like a little bit of white to make it seem like, oh, this is like a really like cool effect. It's like it's like, what the hell is going, like it's a music video almost.
It's like, yeah, this vampire bring in this guy with her into this like nightclub. Everyone seems a little weird, but whatever. And then blood starts to like drop on him, and then like from like it's like a fire, sprinklers that go off, and it's
Yeah,
blood.
it is the infamous blood rave scene is what this scene is called, and it is so iconically 90s cheese, and I
The
love
image
it.
I thought was really great, especially as he's starting to freak out and realize like holy shit. But I was just like, it, it just made me question the vampires because I'm like, are they here to kill him? Why aren't they killing him? Why haven't they killed him?
He, he's the party favor.
Okay, but I don't know. I just that wasn't clear to me. I was
I
like, I didn't. And but
yeah
this also. So when Blade shows up, this also, and as I was watching, so again, I we said this in October. I said this in October when we were talking because we talked vampires all month. Uh, I
yeah
I
yeah
feel like I've never seen the same vampire like lore in like every single vampire thing I've seen. It's never been the same. I think maybe the closest is like Dracula and like Fright Night because I mean that is like modern Dracula, but still like it's never.
yeah
I never
yeah.
see the same thing multiple times, and this I was like, okay, do they have speed? I that was so unclear to me if they could run fast because there were times where I'm like, they could totally kill Blade. I don't know why they're all being stupid.
Yeah, they do explain that like vampires have like superior like strength and speed to humans, but and apparently like it seems like every like vampire that Blade fights also
Yeah,
knows kung fu, so I guess that's just like a thing that all vampires know, or like like I was joking, it's like, did they just have an interview process like, hey, do you know kung fu, because we'll totally turn you into a vampire because we're kind of low on kung fu guys, we lost like 3 last week. It's the whole thing. Do you want it's like, all right, let's go. Like they're waiting outside of like a karate studio to like turn them
yeah. But they like in
like
that scene, the vampires were using like guns and knives and stuff, and I'm like, what are you capable of? And I like when we watched 30 Days of Night, that was another one where I'm like, okay, there's a lot of like lore of vampire that doesn't apply here, but they are still like very capable beings that can kill anything. And these guys, I'm
yeah.
like, what can they do? Because in the beginning, I'm like, these are the dumbest vampires I've ever seen. But then as the movie went on, I realized, okay, they just. I cannot tell you if they were fast or not because there was one scene when it was the subway scene, which was, I think, probably my favorite like piece of action in the movie. But like, there are like, Blade and Dr. Friend. Her name is Karen, but I think they maybe mentioned it like once in the movie.
Yeah, I think yeah, they say her name like in the very beginning with like her
Ex
like
boyfriend coworker.
really like, yeah, her really like random like romance thing with like a coworker that goes completely nowhere. It's like, hey, do you ever think about us? Like, no, dead. Okay, really glad they mentioned that. Thank
Yeah,
you. But yeah,
yeah,
anyway.
like, and they jump onto the back of the subway car, and the vampires are like still running. And for a second, I'm like, okay, are they? For a second, I'm like, oh, it looks like they are fast. They're just not faster than a subway. But then they were slowing down so much that I'm like, no, it doesn't. I guess they're not fast. I just could not tell. Like, okay, yes, they are strong. Yes, they drink blood, but like,
The vampires in this movie are moronically incompetent. Like so.
okay, so it wasn't just
Oh,
me
they, like, yeah,
that
no,
thought
like
that.
they're moronically incompetent, but like, yeah, they do have like, like superior strength and speed, but it's like they severely underutilize any of those abilities on screen, or at least it seems like that when they're fighting someone who has all the same abilities, so it just looks like a normal fight whenever they're actually like fighting. Which I don't know if that kind of like tones down like the actual like severity of like, oh, these two like mythical creatures like battling it out, and like who knows like if they'll actually survive this encounter with each other. And it's like, all right, just it just looks like a random like run of the mill like kung fu sequence of like him like doing a spin kick into a guy and like snapping his neck, and then he turns into like a really like cheesy like CG like skeleton with like ash spelling off of him. Um, Although I did think that was kind of cool that like, since like they're all vampires, that are like, it's not just like a random like body's just gonna be like laying around. It's just like, oh, they're like dissolving into like their skeletons and like completely disintegrating. It's like, oh, so he's like actually like killing vampires, and like it's just it was kind of cool seeing that like they are in fact like these like mythical like supernatural beings, but like he's taking them out like no problem.
I did like that how they died. I thought that was like a cool idea and a cool design. It was like they just like kind of burn, but and you like see their skeleton when it's happening. But I remember it was making me think of when so like my sister and uh like and like one of my friends he's are super into Buffy, and it's one of those shows that people have been trying to get me into, and I've watched
Oh,
like a
oh yeah,
little bit of it.
I have like one season. I'm on like the last season of that right now,
Okay,
actually.
okay. But it's a show. I'm like, I feel like it's a show I can see myself getting into eventually. I don't know, but anyway, I remember I was watching. I think it was like the pilot, or it was like the second episode or whatever, when Buffy's fighting a vampire. And I remember I was telling my sister, I'm like, it's just kind of bugging me. Like, she's just kill. Okay, she's fighting this vampire, but I'm not seeing her do anything that's different. It just like she's not doing anything different than if she was fighting a regular person. And my sister actually gave me a really solid answer. She's like, well, I think because she is the Slayer, she can do that. So it's not just a like she like no, a regular person wouldn't be able to fight a vampire the way she is. She can fight kind of like because she can keep up with the vampires because she is the Slayer, and and like that actually, I'm like that. I'm like, you know what, I accept that. That's a solid answer
Yeah,
because I was like,
yeah, no,
it's
like,
she's not doing
and
anything that special. She's just yeah, also kind of like it's like hand to hand, like physical contact. She's not using a. I mean, she has a stake, but she like wasn't using a stake at that moment. So I was like, what is about this is different than if she was fighting a regular person. So I guess yeah, what's different is that she is the Slayer. So I was like, okay, sure, fine. And I kind of thought that with this.
yeah, and like we kind of do see that, like, because we do see like Karen and Whistler like fighting like some vampires, and like they like get completely like overpowered by like vampires whenever like they're not like keeping them at a distance with like like their vampire like mace or a gun or whatever. But when they're actually fighting them like hand to hand, they're just getting like they're rag dolls basically, because like they're either like completely overpowered, they're out like they can't meet the same speed as like whoever's attacking them, even though I really feel like this movie just like severely like underutilizes like the vampire powers that we see in this movie, because it just looks like just a bunch of like thugs. And
Yeah.
I also thought it was kind of funny that like it seemed like all the henchmen just had a very strict dress code of, all right, we all need to wear sunglasses, we all need to wear black beanies, we all need to like wear like dark clothes and gloves. It's like, all right, Jerry, I have a small beanie. Is that gonna fit you? He's like, cool, bro. All right, let's go. All right, we're all we're all set. Like they look like boy band like background
I will
dancers. Like
say
seriously, like what?
Frost, I've seen like the his whole his outfit, his costume, like I feel like that seems to never go out of style for vampires. Like that's how he looked. It was like the dark button down with like black jeans or black like pants or whatever. I'm like that's how I saw they dressed in Twilight. That's how they dressed in Vampire Diary. Like that never. I think even True Blood. Like that never. Like that is just the universal. Like if you are somewhat good looking, this is what you're gonna wear as a vampire. Like it's like whatever. I will definitely take that over. Yeah, the beanies and the guy who was the guy who the other vampire who was I don't remember his name, but the one who
Oh, Quinn.
yeah he's the dad on Grounded for Life, and he was in Gotham.
Yeah,
Um
yeah. He's yeah, Bullock.
um
Yeah, Donald
yeah
Logue.
yeah
I think is his how you pronounce his name.
he like throughout the movie had his hair in braids, or he had like was it like corn
Just long hair. He just
like
had he just
it
had
was
it
like
loose.
braids loose, or it was like was it cornrows at one point like
I
it
think
was
so.
never he had
Yeah,
various
like
hairstyles throughout, which I thought was like somebody is someone doing that for him, or is he doing that like
yeah, yeah. Also, I kind of want to like point out like the comparison between like Quinn and Frost. So Frost is like the head of like this like subsection of like vampires that control the city, and like the whole city and I guess like other like neighboring cities are controlled by like this like council of vampires that are like pure blooded, like born as a vampires, and they think less of him because he was human who was then turned into a vampire. So he's kind of like that. I like that how they have like a caste system with vampires, and they kind of like slowly kind of like introduce that. But so Deacon Frost is kind of like the main bad guy of this movie that like Blade has been like specifically like hunting down for a while, and Quinn is like his like right hand man, is like top lieutenant. And Blade interacts with Quinn like multiple times throughout this movie. He cuts off his like right arm in the beginning of the movie, then his left arm in like the next one. And he like him and Quinn, I feel like have a way more history and way more beef than him and Frost do. Like him and Frost, like they don't really interact until like halfway through the movie, and it's like over like FaceTime on like a Mac for like three
Yeah.
seconds. But like him and Quinn, it's just like, all right, I got you now, Blade, and he like stabs him with like a stake. It's like, oh, I owe you two for that, and he's like about to stab him again. It's like, why didn't they just make Quinn the bad guy? Like these guys have like so much beef in history. Like they're like they have more like personal like connections towards each other on like why they would hate each other. Like he set Quinn on fire in the beginning of the movie, hunted him down, cut off both of his arms, and then in return, like he beat the shit out of Blade and stabbed him with a stake and almost killed his friend Karen multiple times. And like Deacon's like, what did Deacon do to him? It's like nothing that we know of until like the very end of the movie, and then beat up his dad again, almost at the end of the movie with the help of Quinn.
I don't even think Blade knew that,
Yeah,
though.
and actually, Frost ordered Quinn to beat the shit out of Whistler, so Deacon didn't do anything to him. So it's like, why didn't they just make Quinn the bad guy?
I kind of felt that, one, I felt very much that, like, Deacon was kind of a villain. Two things. Deacon's like a villain, where in the beginning of the movie, there are, like, he has, like, high stakes, sort of. Like, he's, like allowing these raves, and like, the council, whatever he's on, is like worried about exposure and all that kind of stuff. So he is causing way more of like a ruckus than the other vampires. And so he wants to do this whole thing so he can kind of wipe out the caste system. But it seemed more
Yeah,
like, yeah, it wasn't with Blade, it wasn't really, aside from his history, and even his history that he doesn't even realize is connected to Deacon, it was just like, it's really just like he knows, like kind of cut off the like head of the snake type of situation. I feel like that's how
yeah,
Blade was viewing it. But I want to go back to something else you said when you said you love caste systems in like you love the caste system or like the hierarchy in.
yeah. Like I just really like how it was like very like organically introduced in this movie.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't, there was a lot of information we needed to know, and some of it kind of seemed a little, most of the time it felt like it was being told to us at an appropriate time. But I want to continue with that, but really quick, I'm not a big fan of when there's like a hierarchy in vampire things. I'm really like, I don't know, I think for me, like okay, like, uh Twilight, for example, there again, I know, hear me out. There are the like people, the like, they're like royalty, blah blah blah, and they really care about is they want to make sure that vampires aren't risking exposure. So like you could be turned into a vampire, and as long as you aren't doing anything that's gonna out vampires, they will not care and they'll leave you alone. So you could go for a long time without probably ever interacting or hearing from them. Whereas like in True Blood, there's like each like state has like a king, or like it's like a ruler, like a king or a queen of
Like a
vampires, like
like
of
a region.
Louisiana or whatever. I know it's kind of dumb, but
Okay.
anyway, I personally like, but Vampire Diaries, the only real hierarchy is the older you are, the stronger you are. So that, the more experience and the strength and power is what makes it a villain like hard to like defeat. And I like that better, but I also kind of feel like the thing about vampires that I as a like a 13-year-old found appealing was the whole like freedom of it. And so I feel like when there's a hierarchy, it kind of, it controls the freedom. Like it's like, because they don't want to be exposed, they don't want like whatever, they want to just live among humans but also kill them. Like I don't know, I'm
Yeah.
very picky with it. um but kind of, so jumping back to the other thing we were talking about though.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, I agree with you, but I do feel like this, like there are some instances in like vampires movies where it's like there's really no need or purpose for there to be like
right.
a ruling order or like a hierarchy. But I feel like for this movie, the way they have it set up, it makes
Yeah,
sense
I'm not saying it
because
doesn't make sense.
they still,
uh yeah.
yeah, no, but like it makes sense and it seems natural for them to have like systems in this set up so they would have like safeguards for to reduce like risk of exposure. Like they eventually explain that like, oh yeah, we have like a bunch of like back alley deals with like all these like politicians and like they own the police and like Deacon has basically like a familiar who's a cop who he eventually kills because you know reasons
Hmm.
and he's hungry. But it was really cool to see how this movie sets up how this could technically be like the real world without it making it seem so far-fetched and plausible.
Okay.
Like they made it seem as natural as it could possibly be while still remaining like this hidden like dark underside of
Okay. Yeah.
reality,
That's
you know?
that's okay. That's a fair point. Um, but this was another. But kind of jumping back to what else we were talking about, this kind of is another issue that I did have with the movie. Um, it occurred to me, I'm about 30 minutes in, and the movie's called Blade, yet 30 minutes in, I struggled to, I couldn't really determine if he was the main character or not, because it just seemed like he was always out doing something and we weren't seeing him. It felt like how, okay, like it felt almost like Karen is our main character because she's kind of a little bit of the audience surrogate. We're getting information at the time she's getting it because it is
Yeah,
in exposition that we do need. But I'm, which is fine, but like I wasn't seeing, there were too many times I wasn't seeing Blade where I'm like just kind of confused, and I'm like, so I don't know. I think I kind of am just so curious if this was a like an origin story. Like, is the upcoming one, is it going to be more of like how Blade? I mean, it gets explained. Whistler, who's kind of, he found Blade when he was a kid, and he was like, he's, and yeah,
like feeding on the
and
homeless because
like,
he thought he was a
and he
vampire.
kind of explains it, but that was something that I'm like, I understand maybe I was seeing it from the time he was a kid, but necessarily, I don't know, but like more of a start of how he got to hunting down vampires. So that's all he does. Like he's half human, yet he doesn't. I mean, I guess what was it that he said
Yeah,
does he steal money? That's how he operates.
he steals. Yeah, he like steals. He basically like sorry. He
COVID, cough, cough. It's fine.
sorry,
It's
COVID.
fine.
So it it's explained in the movie, or like we see this in the movie, that he buys materials from this like random like shopkeeper who I guess he's like pretty like tight with. We only see him like once though. He like buys stuff from him like on a somewhat daily basis because when like we see him, he's like they're a week early and he throws in like a satchel and it's just a thing full of like Rolexes. And we see when he's like beating the crap out of the cop familiar, he's like robbing him basically. And it's like, what you think? It's like, what? How do you think we fund this little operation of ours? And he like takes the watch off and it's like it's a fake, and he throws it on the ground. So it's like I guess he just robs the familiars and like the vampires that he kills and just uses that to
It,
find
Yes.
everything, because that is a good point, because these guys are very much independent and at times very illegal operators, because there's there's literally a point in the movie where they're when he's like interrogating like the cop like outside in broad daylight on this street, he's just slamming his head into like the trunk door of his own squad car in broad daylight in front of all these people. No one says anything. We don't.
Blade is not discreet.
No, not at all. Like, he's still wearing like his like full like Kevlar black trench coat, katana on his back, gun on his hip, and he's just beating this cop, and it's like no one's doing anything. Like, it's
Or then he shoots at him, and everybody like jumps out of the way and kind of freaks out for a second. And then, like the second I see Blade, it was like back, like the angle change, and Blade's coming back towards Karen. I see a couple like girls behind him walking, and it's like, did you just witness that?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
are you
no,
just you're just like, go, we're just going about it like that was such a weird timing to have an extra move behind it because it was such I'm like, no, if someone sees a gun going off, they're all gonna run or they're gonna like they're gonna do something. They're not gonna, oh, okay, he's done. We're just gonna keep going about our day.
yeah, no.
But like, he's
It's really
not
funny, and
discreet at all.
yeah, and also like later on in the movie, we see like him meeting with Deacon, and also I have a lot of problems with that, but he basically like
Yeah,
yeah, but basically like Deacon like has like this little girl as like leverage, so like Blade won't like try to kill him, which he does try to, so whatever. He throws this little girl into like a hot dog cart, completely destroys it, and she ends up in the street. Not a scratch on her, by the way. And then Blade runs, saves the girl before she's hit by a bus, and runs her across the other side of the street. Again, not a scratch on her. No one acknowledges that this thing happened. She literally like runs by a couple people. They barely acknowledge that she just like squeezed by
yeah.
them. It's like, is like, I don't even think the vampires need, like, why is the council like worried about like the vampires needing to be discreet? They clearly don't give a shit.
That
Like,
it's like basically Blade is operating sort of the same way as the Men in Black, except they can
way
wipe
worse.
memories. Way worse, but they can wipe memories, he can't. And everybody just seems to like, ah, oh, he's done. Okay, and then they move on with their lives. It's like, are you? It's like he's not discreet, and the rest of the world just doesn't seem to care. And yeah, that scene pissed me off too because I'm like, it's daytime. Is there an explanation on why? Was there an explanation in the movie on why Deacon can be out in the sun, or was he like in
Yeah,
the
okay.
shade slightly? Like,
Okay, so earlier on in the movie, him like Deacon and like a bunch of like his like buddies from like I guess his coven or his gang or something kidnap like the main like vampire council leader, and they like take him out in the sunlight and they kill him. Um, but uh, in order for them to not die from the sunlight, they put on a bunch of sunblock. Like they straight up say in the movie, like, this is sunblock, and then they wear like a bunch of like basically like biker outfits, like heavy like leather like jackets, leather gloves, and bike helmets with like UV lenses to cover their face so they can
right?
still see everything. So it's like, okay, that makes sense, and I can understand why they don't just use that to like try and hunt down Blake, because like that's kind of bulky. I
Yeah,
imagine that's kind of hard to see. Like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Then like I want to say like 20 minutes later, Deacon's just out in the open wearing his normal clothes and just wearing like a bunch of sunblock, so he looks a bit paler now. But it's like, if that's literally all it takes to be a vampire out in the sunlight, it's just wear a shitload of sunblock and look really pale. It's like, being a vampire is literally just a day at the beach then. There's
yeah,
no real downside then, other than, of course, like having to like kill and eat people, but whatever. You'll get
yeah.
over
It's like
that. But
it's I appreciate logic, and I appreciate that the screenwriter was like realizing we have to. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is also in the comics, but like you need explanation on a lot of these things, sure. But it's like sometimes it's like also you're kind of going. There is like a thing when it's like there's too much. You're trying so hard to make this make sense that it winds up not making sense. And this was just one of those times where
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, like okay, they have sun like block, whatever, but like also what why they could just yeah they could just wear that all the time and go about just go like it's just
The scene is completely devoid of logic and completely like messes with the fact that like, okay, if vampires can just do this so easily, like he just kind of like casually puts it on, like I guess he doesn't need to put stuff on under his clothes. So if he just like, so with like that logic, he could literally just like walk around like wearing like a really like thick poncho and like having like an umbrella like over his head like all the time, and as long as sunlight just doesn't touch him, he'll be fine. I guess like it's so stupid, but I mean, it, like I can understand if like certain vampires like it doesn't affect, like because I think in one of the sequels, like spoiler, I think he just straight just meets Dracula. Like Dracula is just a thing, and he can like walk out in the sunlight. It's like okay, I guess that makes sense because he's like the first vampire. So it's like I guess like all this stuff is just like doesn't really affect him because everyone else is just like a diluted like mutation from like his original thing. So it's like okay, I guess that makes sense why it's not affected to him. But like everyone else is just like if this is all it takes to not burn alive, why doesn't every
it's just
vampire do this?
like it's almost yeah it's like it's trying too hard to be logical and if anything and like that scene at the park with Deacon and Blade and the girl that could have been a way more serious more like I think it was trying to have like I don't know was it trying to show that Blade kind of just has his mission and he doesn't really care about anything. He does save the girl, but he kind of also was like I guess and it was
He's the one who put her in. He kind of put her in like the direct line of fire by shooting first.
really the point of that scene is because Deacon is talking to Blade because there's information he needs him to know like join us like he basically needs Blade to complete this like ritual thing that he's gonna do and I don't know it could have just been brought it could have been like
Yeah,
it could have been in a more sinister manner or like it could have been at night there was I feel like it could have made that scene not only just more like yes there's action and like there's like a little girl's like life is at stake and it also the whole scene just sequence is just another example of how Blade just did not give a fuck and will just shoot anyone at broad daylight and to like and he doesn't never once gets arrested
yeah. There's no like legal
no
repercussions for what they're doing like at all. Like the only time we see that is when like the cop familiar shows up. It's like, oh okay, so like the cop is like actually kind of like doing stuff, and it's like, oh no, he's just a bad guy. And then the cops just going full firing squad in the hospital like in the beginning of the movie. It's like he is holding an unconscious hostage. Why are you all shooting? Hold your fire. But I think the scene with Deacon, they made it daytime to make it seem plausible on why he just has a little schoolgirl. Like why would there just be a little schoolgirl walk around with like her backpack at night in not LA, or like it makes sense on why it's daytime and why there's a little girl. So like that would make
that
sense,
wouldn't
but
make
it's like
sense at
because if it
night
was
but like why did the little girl even need to be there like because
yeah
it's not
exactly.
like I don't know I feel like we've it
Because I feel like if it was not a little girl, it wouldn't be as strong of a reaction for like Blade or the audience. It's like, oh, it's just some random guy at night. So it's like, okay, there's not. I feel like it's a bigger stake, no pun intended. If it's like, oh, it's a child, so like children are like naturally innocent. If it was just some guy, it's like for all we know, it's like, oh, he was probably like some asshole that like works for Deacon or something. Like we don't know who this guy is. We think he could be like this could all just be like a really elaborate, sloppily conceived trap. But if it's a child, it's like, okay, she's innocent. There's clearly like nothing that she can do to defend herself. If it's like some random guy, it's like, oh, he could try and like like attempt to muscle his way out of like uh being held by like Deacon or something like that. But yeah, and if it was a little girl, it's like, okay, it's not going to make sense if it's night, because why would there just be a little girl wandering around in the city at night? Because then that that's just poor. That's just poor
I
parenting
get
at that
what
point.
you're saying, but I kind of just feel like that we didn't really. I don't know. I'm not saying there was the little girl and that whole thing was pointless or unnecessary, but I think that the information and basically what he's trying to convince Blade to join him. Of course, Blade's not going to be interested, but I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I'm just
Like we
like
like we
whatever.
very
Like
much need to have the join me, come to the dark side like
because we didn't really
situation.
talk about it. So Blade, I don't think we talked about Blade is half vampire because when he was born, his mother was bitten and he survived, but it like kind of messed him up genetically. So he has like the strength and like he has a lot of the qualities of a vampire, including
He
their
has
thirst.
yeah, he has all their strengths, none
Yes,
of their
but he like
weaknesses.
ages like but he's still like half human. He ages like a human. Um, I would think I would think can he die like a human? He was wearing a was it like a bulletproof vest when he gets shot at the beginning?
Yeah, he's wearing like Kevlar. Like I don't know. I'm sure that might be explained in the comics, but this is one of the few heroes that I know like very little about. I don't
Okay,
really know much about Blade outside of these movies, and I don't know how well those follow the comics because
right. Okay,
again,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But he also has their thirst, and so we see in the beginning. This was again another major issue with Blade I had because like he doesn't he's basically he's half vampire. He does not want to be this way. And in the very beginning we see him he goes to the shop who I guess knows what who and what Blade is and what he's doing, and he's saying like he there's a serum that he needs, and he's starting to kind of was it like he's building a resistance to it or it's not really working. And then we see Whistler give it to him, still don't really know what it means, and it isn't until later when Whistler explains it that it's like a serum that's trying to kind of shut off his urge to feed. And I just think, see, that's information that okay, we don't maybe we don't need to know it right at the beginning, but could there be more
yeah,
examples like throughout other than just like the subway scene he's like kind of struggling like he needs his serum whatever, but if more maybe more scenes of him like it's taunting him, like trying to feed, or like he's because that's really Blade's characterization is that at the end he ends up feeding, and Karen was able to come up with a cure, but he's like I'm not, he's not ready to take it because he wants to use his powers to still, you know end this whole like vampire like war. So he can't do that obviously if he takes the serum,
yeah.
so he takes the cure. So that's a huge part of his character, and I just kind of thought they could have shown us more examples of him struggling. And it's other than just
Well,
he okay it's yeah we saw a few scenes of him like he needs a serum, but I don't know. Like I think him feeding and his feeding and becoming a monster. I don't know. I kind of thought that something that could have been shown, not just more, but also just a little better. Because Blade is his characterization was just
yeah.
kind of poor in the beginning, and I'm like,
He's not a very expressive character. Like in like
no.
the scene where like his like Whistler like when he like comes back after like Deacon Frost like kidnaps Karen and like beats like Whistler to like near death and is like about to turn him. Like Whistler is just like a bloody like pulp of a mess. Like his eyes completely like swollen shut. He's got like cuts and gashes like all over him. And like when like Blade looks at him, he just goes, oh, like that's it. That's his like Oscar-winning reaction. That his like father figure that he's known since he was 13 raised him since he was a kid and basically put him on a path that basically is his entire life's goal. And his reaction is, oh,
uh,
like that's
yeah.
it. Like that's the best
Blade
reaction that we
Blade
get
is
out of
also
him.
not the only one with no or very little expression. Karen, in the very beginning, when we first meet her, so like Quinn's burnt body is brought to like the hospital, like he's about to like get an autopsy or whatever, and she's looking at his like something, what was it, like something with his blood cells, they're doing something, and she's like, this is impossible, and she thinks it's her ex-boyfriend coworker who's just trying to like spend time with her or whatever, and then she goes to check out the body, and
Yeah.
he's not, Quinn's not dead, and he attacks and bites her coworker, and she has no expression on her face. She's just standing there. She does not look scared or shocked or anything. And then like I'm like, are you shitting me? Like you like I get you can't maybe you're not really comprehending what you're seeing because you're in such shock, but you would have some sort of expression. Like you're seeing something that you would not expect to see, and I was like, I think I made a note like, does she have no expressions or emotions? Like, what the hell? Towards as the movie goes on, she's way more has
She,
more expressions.
she has no survival
It was
instincts
so, but like I
whatsoever.
don't know, she's not like useless. And as the movie goes on, she's pretty helpful and she's able to also fight. But like in the beginning, I'm like,
Yeah.
what is your deal?
Yeah, I mean, although I will say this, she cannot aim worth a shit. Like like when they're like attacked at the base, like there's a guy like running on like this catwalk. She hits the railing every single time, and you can tell because like when you miss, there's sparks hitting everything. So it's like you miss every single time. How do you have at the same time the worst aim and the best aim because you're like missing the target, but you're missing it consistently and like the weirdest
I
spot.
didn't really notice that.
And also in the temple when she's like shooting like I guess like Deacon's like girlfriend, she's shooting like every pillar like right as like she's like running behind it, like 3 feet like after she's run by it. It's like again, you have like the best worst aim I've ever seen since a stormtrooper. Like
I
what
knew
the
that was gonna
fuck
come
is
out.
going on with you?
We should jump ahead though. She comes up with another weapon for Blade to use, and it's like what you add something, if there's something that comes into contact with like vampire blood, it basically will make them explode. And we see Blade use this when he stabs them with this like dart thing that he has, and they're slowly turning into, they're like becoming like, it's like they're tomatoes almost, like they're red
They're
and they're like
tomatoes. Yeah.
expanding and then they just explode. And when of course that's how he defeats Deacon, and he puts like a bunch of those in him, and then it's like he looks like
Yes.
grapes, like that are in the shape of like a human heart.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, do you remember like the cool badass action one-liner that he gives to Deacon as he's like about to kill him? What was his cool badass action line?
what was it, it was like there's some dumbasses that try to, yeah.
Some motherfuckers always
Is
trying
that a
to ice skate
saying,
uphill.
minus the motherfucker?
I have no idea. That is the weirdest.
I'm like, you can't,
That is the weirdest
can you
action.
not ice skate uphill?
No,
I'm like, I mean, I guess that'd
yeah,
be hard,
it's
but
hard.
anyway, I was like, yeah, I'm like,
Yeah, no,
what?
like ice skating is hard in general, and like yeah, ice skating uphill is like really difficult. But it's like, why is this the thing that you're saying to the bad guy?
I wish Deacon was like, what?
Yeah, like
Who talks that
I'm
way?
watching it. I forgot like how dumb that line was because it's been forever since I've seen it. So I'm like watching it, it's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like what is going on?
I didn't, if anything, I was like, what? I was just like, what? I mean, sure. Like, if that's impossible, then okay, but I feel like if you're fast enough, you could maybe do it. I don't know. I can't ice skate, so I don't know. But yeah, I thought the same. I was like,
Yeah,
what?
regardless of how easy or hard it is, the fuck does that have to do with the situation?
Because Deacon's trying to.
The fact that
I mean, what is Deacon trying
the
to?
fact that you're actively trying to defend the stupidity of this line is amazing me. Like you can't.
I,
There's no right side to this. There's just it's a
there isn't. It
stupid
doesn't
line.
make sense. I agree. I agree. It doesn't make sense. I'm just trying to see how it applies. But
Yeah.
it's like,
It's a really stupid line, but yeah, he kills the bad guy, and we get to the end of the movie where um pretty much like every like comic book movie and like action movie up to this point, like they just like randomly like shoehorn in that like, oh, and like Karen and Blade like kiss because like
They didn't
you're a
kiss.
guy, you're a no like it would shoehorn like pretty much any other
Oh,
movie would do this, like you're a guy, she's a girl, bromance, but this movie doesn't do that, which is
I
actually kind of
appreciated
unique.
that.
Like it's yeah,
Yeah,
I really appreciate that because
I was gonna say
if
that. Yeah,
if it was literally any other movie, that would have happened. But this movie is just like, no, like we've known each other for like what, like a
a
week
week.
top,
Yeah,
yeah, like a week tops, and it's like their interactions are not that like there's not a lot of chemistry like between them for like anything like that to
yeah, I agree. It was. I kind of assumed there was gonna be something, but then as it went on, I'm like, there's. I part of me was like, they better not kiss. But I also, I think I stopped thinking about it because not saying there's nothing there, but not enough is there that if they kiss, like nothing would have warranted them like kissing or anything. Like, and I appreciated that so much because I can't fucking stand when movies do that, and like it's just so overplayed, and so I appreciate that Blade didn't go that route. Is she in the sequels? Same, either whether it's the same actress or just the same character.
I don't think so. I think that she was just in this
Okay.
one, but it's been a
Yeah.
long time. I could be completely wrong, and they just used a different
Yeah.
actress. But
So, yeah.
I just remember in the third one, it has Ryan Reynolds and Patton Oswalt in it,
What?
and they had to give Ryan Reynolds like way more screen time and like way more like yeah, basically like screen time because Wesley Snipes was apparently like a nightmare on set for the third one.
Really?
And there's like so many like there's so many like interviews that like Patton Oswalt is like, yeah, yeah, oh god, hold on. Sorry again, folks.
It's okay.
I know, like I'm just like trying to like somewhat try and stay professional here. Uh, there's like multiple interviews where Patton Oswalt gives where he says like, oh yeah, like Wesley Snipes, he only responded to the name Blade. Like he would not respond to anything else. He,
What?
uh, yeah, yeah, he
Is he a
would
method
only respond.
actor?
What?
Is Wesley Snipes a method actor? Like
I, I,
staying in character all the time?
no, no, I don't think so. He was like had like a verbal argument with the director and would only like communicate with him by with like post-it notes that he would just leave on there. He would
What?
like not leave his trailer like a lot of time because he would just get high all the time. Like he would just stay in his trailer and just get completely stoned. So it's like, well,
Did
he can't come
he
out because I don't know what was up
did
with him.
oh, like okay, he's like sounds like you don't want to be there. Like,
I have no idea.
I mean, do you know if like did he like doing these movies or anything, or you don't know anything about that?
I it's been a long time since I've heard any of these interviews. These are like the main things that I do remember.
That's weird and that's stupid.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's extremely stupid.
so we've been talking for about an hour, so we should get into the big question. Kevin, did you think that Blade is real?
Um, no, I
Yeah.
think that like vampire. I think that vampires, the way that they describe themselves and set themselves up in this movie, I think they could happen. I think Blade would have been shot by the police like years ago if this is how he operates in the public. Like there
Yeah.
would have been like an APB out on him like immediately the sooner he's seen like walk around in public. He's like there's a man wearing like body armor, has an Uzi, several guns, weapons on his chest, and a katana walking around uh this like residential area. Can you send some like police over here? Like that, yeah, that is a very valid visible threat that like warrants some like police like investigation.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like like the vampires and like everything else, like the way they exist. Yeah, I can believe that. Like them having like some like shady like backroom deal with like local politicians to like exist with somewhat discretion in the world, that makes sense. Some, for the most part, from like the public eye, some maniac running around shooting up like a slaughterhouse with like an Uzi and a katana. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna say he got shot down like 6 months ago.
Yeah, I agree. You kind of can. I was gonna. I went out while watching this. Like I'm like, I was thinking like this. I'm gonna say no. This is not real. You kind of actually swayed me a little bit on the vampire stuff. I do feel like it's like overcompensating. Like it's trying really hard to make all of their actions believable, and like the fact that they wear sunscreen and like all that stuff. But so I'm kind of with that.
Oh yeah, that's
It's
completely
it
stupid.
makes
But like them
sense, but it's
existing in like
stupid.
secrecy, like
But
yeah,
like,
no, that makes
yeah, I was
sense.
thinking that like there's if Blake, yeah, first of all, there's no way he would have. He totally would have been like arrested. There's multiple times where, well, okay, like in the hospital, he's being shot at because it looks like he's kidnapping Karen, which I mean, I guess he is, but he's trying to save her. And then in the scene, the very beginning after the rave, and he leaves like the human that he like the human survived and he like leaves him, and then the police come in and I'm like, did he just frame this kid for like murder or like like assault on a person at least like but but anyway, I just thought, yeah, he there's no way he would have not been caught or at least like been arrested a couple of times. Like, I think that was also just my Blade. I think he would have been a way more intriguing character if he was more like living in the shadows and he was being discreet, but he's not. He's just he's just hunting vampires, but not at all trying to keep it a secret and like living in the shadows or anything. So I gotta say, I gotta go with no. I didn't
Yeah,
find it very real.
yeah. I mean that being said, this movie is very entertaining, and it's kind of like it's a weird watching these kind of superhero movies now, like early like 2000 superhero movies, after being exposed to the MCU for like 10 plus years, and kind of seeing like this is kind of how they were. They were like really grungy, and they kind of went through like this weird kind of like, I feel like, I guess you would say, in like an experimental phase, because this kind of got the ball rolling to like, for like comic book movies to be taken a little bit more seriously. Like they can be gory, they can have like plenty of action, they could have like really like compelling like and interesting characters, and it kind of got the ball rolling. And eventually we got like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, we got uh uh some more like the Ang Lee Hulk movie, which wasn't the best, but it did elevate comic book movies to have like more like larger than life action than a lot of the
Yeah.
previous ones did. And like we got more like, like X-Men, Fantastic Four, and like Batman Begins, and just it elevated comic book movies to a higher standard, I feel like,
Yeah.
than what they
Yeah.
previously had before this. Because before this we had like Steel and The Phantom with Billy Zane, and just
Oh yeah.
really crappy. No one took these movies seriously, like dog shit movies that in no way, shape, or form hold up in any standard.
um. Yeah. I think this movie. I was kind of it was kind of meh for me. There were sequences I really like. We talked a little bit like about the subway chase, like that was kind of fun. But like I don't know, I didn't really particularly care that much about Blade, and there were like just I realized there's stuff we still that we like. Did we mention that his mom actually survived and is a vampire, and she's been just like
No,
sleeping with
because
Deacon? Like
it was thrown in at like the
so
last minute, and
stupid.
I think that like it it served no
It
purpose.
was it
They
was so
like
dumb. Yeah.
the movie didn't utilize it at all. So it's like it really wasn't worth mentioning at
I
all.
feel like everything was being taken pretty seriously, and yeah, as I it should be, but I'm definitely very curious to see how this will be introduced in MCU. I feel like in MCU, I can see myself liking it more than I didn't hate this movie, but I was kind of on and off bored, or just I didn't particularly care. I didn't really care that much about anybody. I kind of liked Karen, like, and Whistler. I liked, but like it was I didn't really particularly care about anybody. So what the second the movie ended, I just fast forward to make sure that there was no post credit scene, and then I'm like, okay, we can start we can start recording. I asked you because I keep doing that, not just with Marvel, but with pretty much anything that's not Marvel. I keep forgetting about post credit scenes, and and I just don't think about it because I only associate it with Marvel. But now so many like other, you know, like Star Wars is doing it now, and like Disney's been doing it for a while though. But like I forget all about it, so now
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, either stay here or remember to fast forward and check to just see.
yeah. I totally forgot to check to see if this movie had an end credit scene because that trend didn't really start until well after these movies had came out. So it's like, eh,
Certain
yeah.
movies did it, like Pirates has it.
Yeah, like
They do it, like
well,
things like
well,
that.
I
But
mean, I know it wasn't like an unheard of thing, but like the amount of movies
right,
that had it at that time were very few and far between. Like it wasn't
yeah,
like a very much like, oh yeah, this is what's gonna happen for like every Marvel movie from now to the end of eternity, and it's just something that we all know now. That was
yeah,
something that like we might do this to sequel bait you, but I think at like the time, I don't think that they were even planning a sequel for Blade, and like the sequel kind of came out way later because the second one had the first one was directed by it was directed by Stephen Norrington, and the second one was directed by, or at least heavily worked on by Guillermo del Toro.
what?
Um, yeah, Guillermo del
Wow,
Toro worked. Yeah. Oh, it is a completely different movie.
is it better or is it just different?
I would say better. Yeah.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah, and it even has Ron Perlman in it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Um and it also Wessler. I don't remember how he survived shooting himself in the head, but he's in it. Spoiler. Um spoiler for this like 25-year-old movie. Oh no, 20-year-old. The second one came out in 2002. Yeah, they had a 4-year gap between Blade 1 and 2, and then
Hmm.
3 came out. I think like a year later. Oh, 2004. Okay, I was off by a year.
Okay.
A couple. Yeah. So
Um.
yeah, it was just
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it was just a weird time for comic book movies because they just had this weird experimental phase that it's like, okay, like all these other ones aren't working, and they kind of just found this like niche of dark, brooding like characters that like kind of like continued with like Daredevil, and like they try to like mimic just like, oh, it's working for like Batman and stuff, like let's try like doing this for ourselves, and it just became this like overused trend that didn't really die down, but it's not bad in this one because it kind of was one of the first ones to really like make it a trope, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So, with that being said, I feel like we've pretty much covered the entirety of Blade now. Do you got anything to add to this one, Sam?
Uh. No. I just. Uh.
It's a dot dot dot. But before we sign off, Sam, where can these lovely people find our voices where I do not sound like I am dying right
Um.
now?
I mean, you don't really sound like you're dying. You just sometimes sound like you're dying. Anyway. Uh,
Oh, thanks. That makes me feel so much better.
yeah, we are on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you can find podcasts, YouTube as well. Uh, Follow us on Instagram. So we post, upcoming stuff to let you guys know, when things are coming out and what we're doing next. And yeah, this gonna be fun month. So yeah, stick with us, and we're gonna keep talking Marvel superhero stuff.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these movies I probably haven't seen in like close to like 15 years. So it's
Oh
gonna be
yeah.
kind of like a weird like I probably haven't seen like some of these movies since originally saw them in theater. So it's
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
kind of a fun blast from the past for me. So that being said, I'm Kevin Tracy.
I'm Samantha Tomlinson, and you've been listening to Movie Reel.